If you heard and saw various sounds and lights near Cherryvale Mall Sunday, there's no need to be alarmed, as this was part of a training exercise for first responders. WIFR reporter Anthony Ferretti was at the exercise and talks with participants on what they learned to keep the community safe.
This exercise is done once every few years. The last time it was done locally was in 2018. And Sunday, dozens of first responders and volunteers participated. This year's focus is responding to an active shooter.
It was really interesting just to see how all the different components come together.
It's an active scene in and outside of Cherryvale Mall Sunday evening, though it's nothing to be alarmed about. It's an active shooter training exercise with local law enforcement and EMS personnel.
We work together every single day, but not hand in hand. We're really going to have to work together in these situations so that we can get victims and patients out of harm's way while the scene may still be active.
Participants treated Sunday's training like it was a real-life situation, establishing a perimeter, finding the suspect, and most importantly, keeping victims safe. The biggest focus Sunday was on communication between the different parties and the rescue task force between police and fire to look for victims.
Things like this happen across the country and across the world pretty much every day now. So just knowing that there's different pillars of the community that are working on making sure we stay safe as best as possible.
Amon Chalisa volunteered Sunday playing the part of a victim who was shot. He didn't realize how many people are involved when something like this happens, though his confidence of staying safe in such an instance has increased.
You just have to be prepared for the unexpected. When I got to Mercy, none of them knew what exactly was going on, so it was a shock to them. And in an incident like this, it would be a shock to anyone.
Knowing that we are here, we're as prepared as we possibly can be, at least in the moment. And then how do we keep driving this forward? And if we do, everybody's going to be in better shape.
The victims were each given lanyards saying what was wrong with them and what hospital they should be taken to.
Impressive stuff. Thank you, Anthony. And they also did a mock press conference with the media so law enforcement knows what to say in the event a situation like this happens.